Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today, especially members of Max's family, whom we feel so honored to have with us. I'm Jill Wilkins, Director of Global Engagement and Partnerships here at the World Bank Group. I feel very fortunate, like so many of you, to have known and worked with Max Thabiso Edkins. One of my responsibilities is to oversee the Connect for Climate program, where Max served as a climate expert. Max was passionate about his work and so deeply committed to the cause of climate change. He was a very special member of our team and a dear friend and inspiration to many. Today is a time for us to reflect on the life and work of Max, whose time with us was cut tragically short. At this time, I'd like to invite World Bank CEO Kristalina Georgieva to the stage to share her reflections. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you all very much for being here. On behalf of all of us, the World Bank Group family of Max, I want to particularly thank Max's father, Don Edkins, who is right here in the front row, his father-in-law, Mr. Bjorn Wikström, and of course, although they are not physically with us, I know they are online to welcome to this remembrance of Max, the celebration of his life, his wife Astrid and his son Theo in Stockholm, as well as Max's mother Marianne and brother Thibaut. We feel you here with us. I have been among those in Nairobi at the meeting where Max was supposed to be. And listening to those who knew him well, I felt a terrible, terrible loss, but also a joy that we have had him as part of our family. What Max brought to us at the bank was incredible commitment to fight the biggest danger we face as civilization, this of climate change, to fight it for his own children and to fight it for all of us and our children and grandchildren. He also brought incredible perseverance. Nothing can stop Max if Max sets up his mind to get it done. And when we were sitting in Nairobi that evening after the meeting for which he was headed, we were talking about the many things that only Max can do. We talked about the Vatican becoming part of climate action because of Max. And of course, we talked about the incredible capacity he possessed to turn images and words into something that touches people's hearts and minds and gets them up of their chairs to act. I was told that there is nobody else who has been to as many climate marches as Max. And I know that the very best way for us to honor him is just keep doing what he set up a course for us to do. And the other thing we can do to remember him is to also remember his signature bow tie. And it was that evening when we were sitting in Nairobi when we thought that we would come together, we would make it about life and energy and a good sense of humor, and we would also make it about, hey, we remember you, Max. How could I ever forget? I want to finish with something that actually touched me tremendously, and I want to share it with Max's family. I have never gotten so many letters after a loss of a staff member as I have gotten after we lost Max, starting with Antonio Guterres and going through leaders of the United Nations, ministers, people who got to know him because we so tragically lost him, but came to tell us, we are there with you. And that is the message I want to convey to Max's family. We are there with you. Thank you. And these are the letters that I received from Max.
Thank you, Kristalina. At this time, I'd like to share a message from Sheila Redzepi, our Vice President for External and Corporate Relations, who was unfortunately called away on business and not able to be with us today. It's hard to find words to describe someone like Max. I remember the very first time I met him, I saw determination, courage, and a love for the world and everything in it. Anyone who knew Max knew him to be passionate about many things, and his passion didn't just reside in his heart and mind, it fueled action. Whether he was trying to push the boundaries of global climate policy or bowl in 4 lanes simultaneously with friends, Max would find a way to do it with a will and a charm that was all Max. Max was passionate about changing climate behaviors, about finding connections that would make people sit up and pay attention. And he didn't just talk about the urgency of climate change, he lived that urgency. Every moment counted for Max. Both a scientist and a natural communicator, Max worked tirelessly to engage people everywhere, especially youth, to change their mindsets and behaviors on climate. He brought optimism and tremendous creativity to everything he did, always looking for new and unusual ways to inspire us into action. Max was a key player behind many of Connect for Climate's groundbreaking initiatives. For example, he had the incredible foresight to give voice to Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg at the 2018 annual UN climate talks known as COP24 in Katowice, Poland. He sensed early on Greta's potential as an advocate who would capture the attention of global leaders. Youth climate activists around the world all know who Greta is now. Wherever there was an untapped angle or platform to give visibility to problems and solutions and spur action for the common good, Max would find it. He could so easily identify those courageous, inspiring people because, well, that's who he was. On a personal level, Max was a friend and an inspiration. He brought unique energy, not only to his work with partners, but also to our team here at the World Bank Group. He left a mark on all of us. His passing is a huge personal loss to so many of us who knew him as a colleague and friend, and who couldn't help but be inspired by his passion and his love for his life's work, combating climate change in unique and indelible ways. We are resolved to carry forward his legacy on climate awareness and action on behalf of his family and the global community. We thank you for everything you have given to us, Max. You are in our hearts. I know how much Sheila admired Max and his work, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to share her message. Now, I'd like to share a few reflections on Max and Connect for Climate, also known as C4C. C4C is a global partnership housed here at the World Bank Group that fills a crucial niche in climate advocacy. Its emphasis on creative communications enables the program to reach and resonate with audiences around the world in unexpected ways. From the start, Max was a perfect fit. Max and C4C first connected during the 2011 COP meeting in Durban, where C4C was announcing the winners of its first ever multimedia competition. The competition focused on the power of African youth to create social change. It was typical C4C, melding drama, passion, and natural beauty to tantalize minds and spur action. A standing room only crowd buzzed in the live rainforest built into the Africa Pavilion as the winners were announced. When the moment arrived for the C4C special prize winner, Max's name was called out for his work on the short film, The World Has Malaria.
Oh, yeah.
Matejo nai enakop nikitii ana.
Enakop brother.
Etii enkop naji America, ene taata etii. Netii enkop naji Europe, ene taata etii. Netii enkae naji China. Ake ore kuna kwapi negira aitayu empuruo sapuk amu eeta ngarrini kumok, neeta akeyie ntekei, neeta kuna tokitin naji nkiwandani, nepejito ilat aape taata noo diesel akeyie onoo petroli oweli. Ore peepej nepuku taata ena puruo najo irmeek carbon dioxide, ena torrono, nilepa alo shumata. Ore piilepa alo shumata nelo alo aitarruo ele honi oepito yiok. Toningo niroshiu ele honi taata airoshiu ele honi. Nirowuaju olooho olulung'a.
Metaa ore taata ninche enkop aetiu enai enkop oltung'ani omoi malaria aelo sinye omirowuaja netirri taata atum enkima.
Nijia etiu amu ore taata ina kima nitum naa nkibelekenyat. Metaa ore kuna kibelekenyat naapwonu naa nehi piirowuaja enkop. Iltung'anak aayau tena neeta iltung'anak sii idim aitibira.
Ikola yo kumarombe tango tukamoneku. Ikola yo kumarombe tango tukamoneku. Ikola yo kumarombe tango tukamoneku. Ikola yo kumarombe tango tukamoneku.
When receiving his award, Max talked about the power of participatory photography, video, and theater to communicate climate messages. And then, in typical Max fashion, he twirled around to reveal a message on the back of his dinner jacket that said, "Save the future." It was irresistible and infectious. It was Max. 2 years later, Max would become an official member of the C4C team. How lucky we were. Max had the kind of energy that drew people in, and everyone wanted to work with him. He earned enormous respect from colleagues and partners across the climate community. As an example, also in true Max style, he brought together an unlikely cast of collaborators for the COP23 climate meeting in Bonn, connecting young artists and activists in Fiji live with climate delegates to showcase the need for urgent climate action. In a little while, we'll hear a musical tribute from this same group of Fijian artists. 2 years ago, we lost C4C founder and our dear friend Lucia Grena. We like to think that one of Lucia's wisest decisions was recognizing Max's talent in Durban and bringing him on board. Some colleagues who were in Durban at the time recall Andrew Steer, who was then Special Envoy for Climate Change at the World Bank Group, telling Lucia, "Keep an eye on this guy. We need him at the bank." Max shared Lucia's passion and vision for climate advocacy. His commitment inspired so many of us to do more. I know that Max's passion and energy will live on in the many young people who were touched and inspired by his message and example. And for that, we will always be grateful. I'd now like to introduce Max's father, Don Edkins, a globally acclaimed filmmaker whose life example we know served as an inspiration to Max.
Max was a global citizen. We've had gatherings, memorial gatherings in Cape Town, in Sweden, in Berlin, Germany, in Lesotho, and now here in Washington, D.C. I'm just so happy to be here with you, and I really appreciate that you've all come to share this with us. Max was born at home in Lesotho 36 years ago. He grew up with his brother Tebo in rural Africa, with the freedom and joy that that allowed. I think it was the best upbringing we could have given our children. His Sesotho name means happiness. And Max was very happy. We've all seen it. His big smile, his embracing of others, his positive life force. And he was never cynical, and he never criticized other people. He just had this amazing power of love and happiness. He grew up in nature and he loved it. Our hikes and horse rides through the mountains, our adventures in the great nature reserves of southern Africa, our jumping into the surf in the Indian and Atlantic Oceans. Max loved it all. He would take his surfboard out at any opportunity. He was an expert and elegant skier, together with Tibor taking the wildest and most difficult tracks, and sometimes I would have to follow them, which didn't work out very well. Max being Max, he would always push us to go further, go higher, take one more road to explore that next valley, or go across that mountain, or go find the lions or the cheetahs around that next bend, or maybe over there. He pushed us to do more, and he did that with everything in his life. My wife, Mariana, reminded me that when Max was 2 years old, he just refused to eat spinach. He was so stubborn that she wrote to her mother in Germany and asking, what can I do with this child? And some of you know how stubborn Max was. But it got things done. After school in Lesotho, in Germany, and in Cape Town, he went to the University of Cape Town. He took his first degree in natural science, conservation biology, and economics. He naturally became a scientist. It's what he wanted. To learn, to be curious, to understand things. And he so enjoyed the research, especially when it took him into these remote areas of the Kruger National Park or the coast of Mozambique, or diving off the marine reserves in Tanzania. He was also a master diver. Then he got a scholarship to go study for a postgraduate degree at the University of Oxford, and he studied environmental change and management. And Max met Astrid, who was in the same course. And they fell in love, and they fitted together so well. He always wanted more and was passionate about getting things done. But his scientific background gave him the foundation to be an activist in environmental change, which led him to be an activist for climate justice. He was also an explorer, and one of his great wishes was to travel across Africa by land. So he left the Energy Research Institute at UCT, and he and Astrid bought a Land Rover, a used Land Rover, of course, and started off from Cape Town, out through Namibia, across the Caprivi, traveling through southern and eastern Africa. And sometimes when we got to hear about where they went, I just thought, how did he manage to get across that part of the terrain? He just went places that none of us could really understand how he managed to do it, but he had this determination that just kept them going. But this trip that they took was so important because their main focus was to go and work with communities around climate change, using theater, using film. It was also to understand how they were being affected by climate change, and then bringing their knowledge to explain why these things were happening to these communities and to the people. They found stories that had never been heard before. And then they had an accident that wrecked their Land Rover. And their Land Rover, by the way, was branded with Lesotho and Swedish flags. And they went to Zanzibar, and Max made a photo story about their experiences working with these remote communities. And the cover of this photo story has a photograph of a small building in Stone Town that he found, with some words written across in capital letters, "Don't give up any day." And that became a motto for them. If somebody in such a less privileged position could say that, what did it mean for those who had so much more? They didn't give up on their mission. And then Max made this film, The World is Malaria. We heard how he got to know C4C and then came here to the bank to be part of the team. I have a photograph I took of Max when he was about 6 years old, holding up a banner with Teboho during a protest in Germany against the Deutsche Bank investments in apartheid South Africa. I was in exile because of apartheid. And it was Maria and my wife who were protesting, but Max and Tebo came along with us in everything we did anyhow. But the important thing here is that the global anti-apartheid movement that we were part of was the most successful human rights movement of the last century. And that struggle that started in South Africa was supported by people, ordinary citizens, who understood the injustices of apartheid and the urgent need for change. And as the movement grew around the world, pressure then started against companies and banks to disinvest from South Africa. When the big corporations came on board, this led to the collapse of the economy of South Africa and the end of apartheid. And through Max, I got to understand that a similar movement is underway today. A citizens' movement for climate justice, seen most recently through the School Strike for Climate and Extinction Rebellion. It's global and it's gaining traction. And as with that global anti-apartheid movement, we have the same opportunity today to act on climate change. It's the people who are leading, and it is time for the big corporations to come on board. It's time for disinvestment in the fossil fuel industry. Climate change is a global problem that requires global solutions. And yes, the World Bank has a role to play. It's playing a role, but it needs to be a role model, even bigger. The path is clear. The Paris Agreement shows the way, and the bank needs to lead the way for the whole world. The science is there, you all know it. And we have to do this in the name of Max. And Max and Astrid's son, Theodore Wilde, and his soon-to-be-born brother in 3 or 4 weeks. Here at the bank, about 5 years ago, there was a memorial for Nelson Mandela, and Max stood up, and this is part of what he said. Now that Madiba has left us, the message I take with me is that one person really can change the world. This is the message I would love to take forward to the next challenge of our generation. The challenge, in my opinion, is climate change. But I really wonder whether there'll be another Mandela. So for the climate challenge, I would rather say that we can all change the world, each one of us. And let's take Madiba's legacy and let it guide us. And that is the future he was fighting for. And don't give up any day.
Hi, my name is Max Edkins.
My name is Max Thabiso Edkins.
This is Max.
Max. Max from Lesotho, South Africa. We are from Lesotho. Yeah. You know the little country in the middle of South Africa?
Yeah, I know.
That one.
Oh, here.
Yeah. I got into climate change because I studied evolutionary biology, and I realized that we are driven by evolution. Now, climate change is our evolutionary story, right? We're doing this because of our children. This is our challenge.
I've always enjoyed working with photography and film. I wrote my master's thesis on concentrating solar power and the rollout of CSP in South Africa.
Both me and my wife, we met studying together, and that really put me on a trajectory to be a climate champion, a champion for climate action.
It's a great day to be talking about the environment.
I'm the climate change expert at the Connect for Climate program of the World Bank. We started off with a competition for African youth in Durban. That's when I personally actually got involved with Connect for Climate. Me and Axel Bresto in Brixton, we set up the Climate Conscious program. And to win an award such as Connect for Climate is just fantastic. The aim of the program is really to capacitate rural communities to spread their messages to the international community.
We believe in the power of communication to change society. Videos are the medium that are influencing our behavioral choices. One of the main reasons why we're here is to help elevate the voices of young people. And this is our time to redefine our future. There's a huge new economy that we're going to be building, and young people want to be part of that. We together can build a future. We can make history right here, right now. And you really need to think outside of the box and put on your exploration glasses. Educate yourself, be part of the solution, and join us in Uniting for Climate Action. That is the future that we must embrace now, and that's why I've put on this jacket, because this is a jacket that I wore to my graduation. So all together, let's make sure that we save the future. Hi everybody, so I thought I might as well pull out the signature bow tie, because we are in the midst of the greatest revolution, and this is just so exciting. We've heard it's a big challenge, but actually that is the biggest opportunity to be a part of this new future. We are in the midst of a radical ecological and economic transformation to build a low-carbon, resilient economy, the economy that we need for our future. And you guys are part of that. Now's the time for action. Further, faster, together. Testing 1, 2, 3. And welcome to the Planet Tech stage at the Web Summit. And welcome to Venice. We're coming to you live from COP23, from the World Bank, here from Vietnam, from the Innovate for Climate Conference in Barcelona. We want to hear your voices. With some local schools. I'm a South African German who was born in Lesotho. And while I cannot say I was fortunate enough to actually directly meet Mandela, I was lucky enough to have a smile at me. It's a smile that you carry with you, and it's a smile that I've tried to replicate whenever I can. Because my name is Max Thabiso, it actually means happiness. And the message that I take with me is that one person really can change the world. Amanda! Away to! Away to!
I just want to say that was a really well done video that really captured Max. It was all I could do to hold myself back. So I met Max in primary school in Maseru, Lesotho. I think we were about 10 years old at the time. We didn't connect immediately. But Over time, we had a great friendship. And that friendship developed primarily around our love for nature and all things outdoors. Since that time in primary school, Max has been in my life in all ways. As I got to know Max and his family, I realized how unique they were. I come from a biracial, bicultural family, which I thought was pretty progressive at the time. But they brought another facet to my life, you know, and I've always treasured being a friend of the Edkins family. And having been part of that family for so many years, I can tell you that so many of Max's impressive qualities came directly from the way he was raised. Many of you who met Max as an adult may not know, but he was actually very shy as a young boy. His mother, Mariana, and I were reminiscing about how when there was a primary school play that we were putting on, and Max was so nervous to get on the stage, which is obviously a far cry from what he's been doing the last few years. But despite his shy demeanor, whenever he had a point to make, he would make that point. He wouldn't let his shyness stand in the way of him being able to get out and either stand up for the cause or just stand up for a person or whatever it was that he put his mind to. And that carried on throughout his life. So it's no surprise that his curiosity, strength, and integrity were reflected in his passionate advocacy for climate change. His infectious drive to get out and explore the world and to make the most of each day led us on so many incredible adventures. As young boys, we used to race horses around the village. And then as we grew up and became more adventurous, we would take trips that would last days and weeks at a time, much to the stress of our parents. You know, cell phones weren't very reliable in those days. One of the more recent trips we took with Max was his version of a bachelor party. So along with his brother Tabo and another dear friend of ours, Magnus Kosman, we drove to the Kgalagadi Transfrontier Park in Botswana. There we camped under the stars. We came face to face with a hyena, and we saw a leopard stealing meat right off the fire. But this was just a normal trip with Max, and you know, it's just one of the many trips I'll never forget. He was always at the heart of these adventures. He was always influencing us to go further, to work past our inhibitions, and to overcome any obstacles that we faced, whether it was in the journey or in our own lives. And I know Max enriched many, many people's lives this way. Whilst we were at UCT, Max excelled. His dedication to excellence just became really, really clear, his focus. And the thing that I always found most enduring was the way that he was excellent without being alienating. You know, it's a rare quality, and it's one that I always quietly admired from Max's, the way he wouldn't alienate himself, even though you could tell this was someone who was on a bigger mission than most. He always had time to offer constructive criticism on anything we were doing, or I was doing, or he was doing, or our friends were doing. I recall one such occasion when I'd come over to the Edkins house in Cape Town, and it was obviously around dinner time. I was a student. And I was struggling because I wanted to tell my parents that I wanted to drop out of graduate law school and start my own business. And I asked Max for some advice. And he simply said to me, he was like, just tell them the truth. He said, no matter how uncomfortable or agitating it may be, the truth is always the best route to take. And that conversation has always stuck in my mind and has been a guiding principle. And it was all the more impactful because he lived by that mantra. Max always told the truth, and I really loved him for that. He was an everyday part of my life, and despite the distance of living in different countries and continents, he was always just a message or a call away. And we always picked up where we left off as if I'd seen him earlier that morning or the day before. I could bear my heart to Max without any fear. He loved me and he knew me inside out. There was no judgment from him. He listened to what I said and to what I left unsaid. And he's been there for every part of my life, from the small things like where to get good food in DC, to helping me find places to live in Cape Town and here in DC again. He was there for my marriage. He was there when my children were born. He's the godfather of my children. Max advised me to advance my education when I was filled with doubt. And it was him who again then, after I've completed my education, urged me to use the skills I'd gained to do something positive. Last year, while I was in Lesotho, I spoke to Max over the phone and told him about the drought in the country. I then told him about this climate-smart aquaponics system, and of course he told me, of course, just go for it. And he gave me that great enthusiasm, and now I'm about to start the first pilot program in Maseru. And it was so typical of Max to provide me with the gusto to get started, to play a part in spreading the message and actively tackling climate change in any way that you can. I know he brought the same passion to his career. He brought the truth to the world for years. And as uncomfortable as some people may find it, Max continued to tell the truth, and he continued to inspire others to take up the mantle to tell this truth. And it's funny to me because this is the same boy who wouldn't get up on the stage at an elementary school theater production. And now he's on the global world stage communicating to the entire world. Max can be called a change maker, a climate champion, an innovator, champion for the youth. He was a gentleman, a father, a husband, a son, and a brother. And all those roles he embodied so well. Max will always bring to my heart joy, excitement, laughter, perseverance, dedication, a love for people and for the world, and the vigor to do all I can do to be part of the solution. We'll miss you all dearly, Max. Thank you.
My name is JC Amado, and Max and his wife Astrid are dear friends of mine. We studied together at the University of Oxford 12 years ago. We lived in the same college building for several of those months, and we have since shared some of our most special moments together, including our respective weddings. Max's accomplishments in climate change communications and advocacy are second to none. He brought passion, joy, and tenacity to his work. But what's truly special about Max is just how much he lived this truth outside of work with his friends and family. I remember my first days at university in the UK. My English at the time was pretty poor, and I was less traveled than most students. Max was one of the first students from our program that I met. Accomplished, well-traveled, handsome, outgoing, he easily stood out from the crowd. He quickly became one of my closest friends. Together with 3 other friends from our master's program, we were penned the Oriel College Boys. And we embarked on a year full of academic and personal growth with a shared drive to make a difference on environmental issues. During that year, Max was always there for me, be it to study until dawn or discover the many wonders of Oxford together. Towards the end of our master's program, I remember burning the midnight oil on our final thesis together in the library of Oriel College. Max, the ever-diligent student, found himself at the last moment frantically writing his thesis, just like myself. What I remember clearly is that Max finished his paper much before I did, somewhere around 4:30 a.m. on the day it was due. But despite being tired, Max did not go to bed right away. He stayed around to offer support and cheer me on as I wrote the final pages of my thesis. Of course, Matt did much better than I did on the final grade. He was awarded a distinction. And that was typical Max. He excelled at most things, sports, studies, work. But he always did so with genuine humility. When I got married in Portugal in 2012, Max and Astrid traveled to be with us, as many of our friends did. Days after my wedding, I heard countless stories of how friends from Canada and Europe who did not know Max met him on the streets and in the bars of Lisbon, and just how much laughter and mischief he brought to the party. One of my friends from Canada got his luggage stolen and credits Max for lending him a suit jacket so that he had something formal to wear on my wedding day. And to this day, I am told that the 2 days in Lisbon preceding my wedding ceremony were the real highlights of the trip. Unofficially emceed by no one else than Mac himself. And that was Max's gift, bringing together people from different walks of life for a shared purpose. And I know that this quality truly shined through in his work at Connect for Climate. Max and Astrid, together with Matt King, were my first friends to travel to meet my firstborn. They made the long drive at night from Washington, D.C. to Ottawa, Canada, to meet my little girl. And during the visit, Max made a real effort to connect with my daughter, even though she was only 15 months old. He was always quick at taking her in his arms and playing with her, foreshadowing just how much of an outstanding dad he would soon become. This visit is one of the fondest memories I have of Max. It showed just how truly he cared about not just me, but my family as well. Hundreds of thousands of miles apart, Max always made it a priority to stay connected and keep close the relationships that mattered to him, be it with colleagues, friends from university, or childhood friends from Cape Town, South Africa, or Lesotho. Recently, this past September, we celebrated our 10-year graduation anniversary together in the UK with many of our classmates. Little did we know how precious these moments with Max would be. On Saturday afternoon, Max led the group to the meandering canals of the town to go boating. We spent the afternoon punting, singing, and reminiscing of a special year at university together, all the while making plans for the future. That night, Max closed our annual alumni dinner with an address to the recent graduates of our program, sharing with them his excitement for his work on climate change and describing the upcoming years as the most exciting time of our lives. Last week, I watched a video of Max delivering this speech, and it lifted my spirits, but it was also deeply heart-wrenching just knowing how brief our time with him in this world would be. As we gather today to celebrate Max, I encourage you all to live life as large as Max did. He celebrated and cherished every moment. Each passing encounter was meaningful to Max, and he always found a way of marking that and making each one special. One way he did that was by bringing small gifts at each of his visits. A Swiss Army knife, a wine bottle opener, and last fall, a Swedish cheese knife. Max could see deep in the soul of people around him, and as a Frenchman living in Canada, he got it spot on. So now, whether camping in the deep woods of Canada or doing a picnic by the Seine River in Paris, I'll be enjoying wine and cheese, as I often do, but you can be sure that I'll be saying cheers, santé, prost, and celebrating the cherished memory of my dear friend, Max Thabiso Edkins. Rest in peace, my dear friend. May God will always be with you, Astrid, Theo, and your family, and long live your memory.
Max, Astrid, and I met in graduate school almost 12 years ago. Along with some others from our class, including JC, we became very close very quickly and have remained good friends ever since. There was something special about our time at Oxford, something magical. Sure, it's Oxford. It's august and regal even. There were balls and rowing clubs, bike rides amongst the dreaming spires of colleges hundreds of years old, formal dinners under paintings of queens and kings, prime ministers, and popes. But these were formative years. We were exploring the world and discovering ourselves and our places in it together. We were young, younger than most classes that had been in our course. Our average age was only 24, most of us straight out of university. Out of the 33 of us, we came from 23 countries. We came of age together. They were heady times for climate, too. Al Gore and the IPCC had just won the Nobel Peace Prize, and some of our lecturers and advisors had been a part of that IPCC work. When we entered the course, we came from 14 different disciplines, and now, today, 28 out of the 33 of us work in climate change, and that included Max. We were there to learn, to work, to change the world. There was an energy to our group, a drive to attack life and serve a higher purpose with our Oxford education and experiences. We were audacious, inspired. The world was in the palms of our hands, ours to make of it what we would. But the secret ingredient, one of the main ingredients that made it so special, was Max. He was both the reason for this magic and fed off of it himself. It was a feedback loop of epic proportions. He represented the best of us, embodied this energy, this esprit de corps, the headiness, the naive optimism, although I would not call Max naive. He was sharp and informed and grounded, confident, yet he carried it so lightly, assertive, but tinged with a gentleness and a kindness, a fighter, but for respect and inclusiveness. Wise already. So I should rather say he was naive enough to think he could change the world, but talented and tenacious enough to actually do it. He was our leader and our driving force. Who was our class representative? It was Max. At our 10-year graduation anniversary last September, who would speak at the alumni dinner? It was Max. And a week into our course, who was going to help organize a birthday party for the Kansas kid who had never traveled outside the United States before moving to England and was homesick and didn't want to be alone but didn't want to mention anything to anyone because he hadn't quite made friends yet and didn't want to impose? Max did that for me. There's a quote from Anna Karenina, this is over the top. There's a quote from Anna Karenina that I think captures the tradition and auspicious nature of Oxford, but also the joie de vivre that our class brought to it. In it, the great thing was to be elegant, generous, plucky, gay, to abandon oneself without a blush to every passion, and to laugh at everything else. That's what it was like to have been at Oxford during those important early years of our lives, of our careers, of Max's life, of his career, where he and Astrid met, where he entered a biologist and left an aspiring climate champion, but already a climate warrior, and how it impacted our lives and who we all are today. At the end of our second term, we took our exams. After we emerged, we gathered for this photo in Harris Manchester College. To me, this is very Oxford. Traditional, grand, perhaps even a little stiff. And this is a few moments afterwards. To me, this is what it was like to be at Oxford with Max. Elegant and plucky, but pursuing our passions with abandon and laughing at everything else. But let us not misinterpret this photo, even though there is some champagne involved. Max earned a distinction overall at Oxford, which is a rare achievement even for the best and brightest. Over the years, some of us, myself included, perhaps have been worn down a bit by life. Sure, we graduated into the recession and fought through it, but even on climate change, we may have been jaded by challenging climate conferences, discouraged by updates to the science, daunted by the enormity of the task at hand. But Max never lost that verve that we cherished so much from our time at Oxford, never got jaded or tarnished. He always still sparkled like he was still 25. And he fed us with that vitality, that vigor. He inspired us. He was invincible, fearless. With Max, one could do anything. I spent most of my holiday in September with Max in Oxford and then Sweden, where we joined Astrid and Theo out at the country house, a while outside of Stockholm. One day we went for a run. Quickly we settled into that perfect but so often elusive rhythm where you feel like you can run for days. But after a couple of kilometers of this brisk but somewhat comfortable pace that Max was setting, I was ready to stop. But then he speeds up. Come on, King, let's go. We're pushing ourselves. Our lungs are burning. Our legs are screaming, but we kept pushing harder and faster. Max and I are in this rhythm, pushing each other, me in front of him, then he passes me, and we go back and forth, running hard on the moss and fallen leaves in the cool, damp air. No words, just our breathing, jumping around on the rocks amidst the trees. It was a perfect run. And just as Max slows, and I think that we're done, we emerge from the forest at the edge of a lake. It's huge, daunting. The water is dark and probably really cold. God only knows what is in that water. I stop dead. Max is going to want to swim. I don't finish this thought by the time he's removed his shoes and shirt and is in the water. Come on, King, what are you waiting for? Now, I'm from Kansas, and that is the geographic center of North America, just about as far from water as one can get. I am not comfortable in large bodies of water, particularly deep, dark ones where there are definitely sea monsters lurking beneath the surface. So here I am, standing on this dock, terrified to get into the water with Max urging me on, just like he's done for the dozens of swims we've had all over the world. The North Sea, a pond in Luxembourg, rivers in Portugal, and even Loch Ness. And so as I've done countless times before, I jump in and I swim to him. But then he swims off, further out and into deeper water. And again, he urges me on. And again, I swim out to him. We went further and further, halfway out into this giant lake before we turned around and swam back. It's a simple memory, but one of my favorites with him. He was always pushing all of us to do more, to go further, to act more boldly, to be brave, more courageous. Like when we were in Trader Joe's here in DC on a Sunday afternoon, and we get in line behind Christine Lagarde. And he's miming to me, "Is that Christine Lagarde?" He's not saying anything. "Is that Christine Lagarde?" And I'm mouthing back, "I think so. I think that's Christine Lagarde." And he mimes, "Should we talk to her?" And I'm literally emphatically waving my arms no. He taps her on the shoulder and introduces himself as a bank employee, congratulates her on completing the spring meetings. And it was that Sunday. And we ended up having a lovely conversation with her about climate change. Or when he made me crash a practice manager's house after a run in my neighborhood for a drink, someone I did not really know very well. Or when Max crashed a climate change group retreat and marched straight up to John Roome to ask what the bank was doing on negative emissions. Straight in the room, straight to John. I have dozens, hundreds of specific memories like these. But what I've been most struck by over the past few weeks is not these detailed recollections, but rather how he made me feel. When he was with you, he was just so present, engaged. It didn't matter if you knew him 12 years or 12 minutes. When you met Max, you were his friend, and he was yours. There's that one single special moment every year when you first feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. It means that the spring is coming, that the world is coming alive again after a cold, dark winter. And it only happens once a year. On the Tuesday after Max passed, I was walking to work and I was crying, and the clouds parted, and for the first time this year, I felt the warmth of the sun on my cheeks. Max's friendship was like that. It wasn't so much about how many memories you had with him or how specific they were. It was about how he made you feel. Wanted, loved, inspired, motivated, challenged, optimistic, and hopeful. In the fog of our grief, it can be difficult to determine whether the world is a darker place without him in it or a brighter place because he was. I say we choose the brightness, that when we get tired and frustrated and feel hopeless, daunted by the task at hand and uncertain whether we are a match for the challenges we face, whether it be in our climate fight or our development crusade, or just going for a swim, we think about how Max made us feel. And then we can push a little harder, be a bit more ambitious, take the risk and try something new, run a little faster, swim a little bit deeper, and go a little bit further.
all the ice caps are melting. It's a catastrophe waiting. Why are we so inhuman to the earth? You're sitting there thinking, this doesn't affect me. Global warming doesn't involve me, no. But when the crops are dying and the water's dry, cause the sky is angry. When the rivers and oceans overflow and carry everything away, cause the sky is crying. All those forest fires and our little children losing their home. We need to come together as one, protect the earth together as one planet. No African, together as one. No Asian, together as one. No American, together as one. No Indian, together as one. No Caribbean, together as one. No Arabian, together as one. One planet love, one together as one.
We have been living in the world of fear. For many years we are struggling and they like don't care. Hey, so many days we have to go with no rain. It's pain when we see our lives ending in vain. So many people are starving without food. No more enough food in this country. Is that good? No, it's high time we should come together to make a difference. Cutting down trees without a plan. Tumefanya wengi wamekufa huku juu ya njaa. There's one thing we have to learn. If we come together, we can make change in our land. If we come together, we can make change in our land.
New Delhi hadi Turkana, climate change imekuwa juu sana. Society, where's your true colors? We pollute every day, leo na jana. New Delhi hadi Turkana, climate change imekuwa juu sana. Society, where's your true colors? We pollute every day, leo na jana.
Together as one, no African, together as one, no Asian, together as one, no American, together as one planet.
I woke up in the morning with tears in my eyes. When I think about the future, I see nothing to smile. The sun is bright, the moon is shining. Look at those faces, man, no one is smiling. Extreme climate, everybody is running. What's gonna change the world? We have to keep on trying. We are leaders of tomorrow, that is what we believe. The message is clear, I want you all to receive. I want to live pollution free and no more disease. Clean water for the kids and clean industries. Clean air in the streets and planting more trees. Yes, I voted for change. Global warming is real.
Tulipata good speech kwa media, empty deeds kwa kazi. Daily brief kwa hizi screens ni sorrowful, ni tragic, ni evident. Mobility juu ya pollution kwa hewa na maji ni main issue globally tuna face kila mahali. So sifiti pia na hi-fi. Fear ni great worldwide. Tujipange ni time tuungane mikono pamoja na tutashinda fight. Come together, let's rise. End pollution, let's fight. Tukaze misuli, tupaze sauti midhili ya mama Wangari Maathai.
Together as one, no African, together as one, no Asian, together as one, no American, together as one, no Indian, together as one, no Caribbean, together as one, no Arabian, together as one planet love, together as one planet.
That was the song that we talked about in Nairobi. Congratulations to the team who made that happen. My name is Elizabeth Mealy. I work on communications in sustainable development here at the bank. Today, I represent the many climate communicators who worked with Max over the past several years across the bank group and beyond. When I say work with Max, I really mean campaign with Max, because that's how Max saw it. We had limited time to reach an infinite audience with a clear message. Climate change is bad, but it's also an opportunity to transform our world for the better. Everyone who campaigned alongside Max couldn't help being swept up by his drive and his passion. One such person was Dan Thomas, Chief of Communications for the UN Global Compact, who worked closely with Max and the C4C team at many UN events. Dan couldn't be here today, but he sent this message. Max was a dear friend and a strong partner to all of us at the United Nations working on climate action. He was also instrumental in supporting the vision and growth of the SDG Media Zone. I will always remember the time we connected the SDG Media Zone at the UN Ocean Conference in New York with the Connect for Climate SDG Media Zone in Bologna at the G7 Environment Minister meeting. It was an imaginative and bold idea that showcased the great spirit of collaboration and partnership that Max was known for pioneering. Max was a shining example of multilateralism at its best. He will be missed. Thank you, Dan. It's now my honor to introduce another group of amazing people who were swept up by Max's passion, starting with Laura Tuck, Vice President for Sustainable Development here at the bank, and then John Roome, Senior Director for Climate Change, also here at the bank. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everybody. We fast forward a few years. I first met Max in Paris. It was 2015, and it was my first COP as Vice President for Sustainable Development. And so before the successful conclusion of that COP, which we all know about, it wasn't at all clear there was going to be any kind of agreement. And there was a desperate attempt by many who were participating to shore up the coalitions of support. The French were doing their part. They mobilized President Hollande and President Obama to come and try to drive everyone to closure and talk to all the ministers. But Max was there, and Max knew that tackling climate was also going to take something else. It wasn't just the ministers. We needed to reach out to much bigger constituencies, and particularly we needed to reach out to young people. They were going to be the foundation for success. Their consumer market power, their social media, their energy and impatience for action, they were going to be the ones that were going to make it okay for politicians to make the tough decisions. Not only okay, but imperative for them to do so. The generation that grew up with the impacts of climate were going to have to make for the action. So we're in Paris, and Max comes up and he approaches a colleague of mine and he asks if I'd be willing to participate in an event he was putting on. It was a screening featuring a movie called Inconvenient Youth, directed by Slater Jewell-Kemker, who I think is here today. This wasn't on my agenda. I was running around. I had meeting after meeting and briefings to prepare and speeches to, but Max, as you've just heard, was Max. And he pushed and he said, this is something you need to do. You need to talk more to these people. You need to stop just talking to the ministers. So the idea was to bring young people into a conversation about climate, but also about how you could use film and the arts and creativity to spark their interest. And so he brought Slater, he brought Fernando Mireles, who's the director of the movie A Constant Gardener. He had Kumi Naidoo, who was the head of Greenpeace at the time, and Bianca Jagger. And he brought this amazing these people together to really talk about how they can engage. And the room was packed with young people, and you could just feel how they were able to get this message out and motivate the group that was in the room. But it wasn't just youth. And Max knew that we needed to push and reach out to everyone if we were going to have an impact on climate. And he knew, working in the bank, that the bank could be a force for change. But to reach everyone, he needed to push us, traditional bank staff, sort of out of our comfort zones, and that to reach policymakers, we can talk to policymakers. We're also pretty good at talking to civil society. But we were going to have to do a lot more and to go beyond these obvious audiences. So Max, as you've just heard, was full of ideas. So there was Connect for Climate, but he had this whole sort of for climate thing that he had going on. We had films for climate, fashion for climate, music for climate, sport for climate, leaders, action, voice, all for climate, all these ideas. And the point was to encourage all these different communities to rise up and use their constituencies for change in their work, in their day-to-day life, and for them to provide political support for this agenda. And so one fantastic example that I also got to work with him on was a Films for Climate effort he had at the Marrakesh COP, where he got a global film competition on climate going. There were more than 800 submissions that he attracted from 155 countries, and we got to see the power of this medium, which I think he got from his family, on how we could use this, the art and the film, to put out a compelling message that would bring people into owning this agenda as well. Max came to us at the bank for a short time to charm us, to inspire us, to wake us up, to get us out there. And we will all take Max forward to every climate event we go to now. But we will also take his message to heart into all the work that we do. We recently went to our board with the update on the Sustainable Development Strategy, and we put climate as our first priority, but we also put for the first time a new pillar on citizen engagement, to really this effort to reach out to the people and to bring them into the Sustainable Development Agenda. So we are now formally committed to keeping his mission alive. When I worked in Europe and Central Asia, there was a saying that you live as long as your memory lives. And I think Max will live a very long time in our work and in our memories. So I'm, like others, wearing this green bow tie with pride because I was blessed to have known Max. And I want to thank you, Don and Nali, for being with us. Please take our love back with you to Astrid and Theo, Marianne, Thibaut, and Marie. Thank you very much.
I can still remember vividly a couple of months ago as I was walking down, having summited Mount Kenya, and they handed me the satellite phone, and Giulia was on the line informing us that Max had died in the plane crash. And it was one of those moments where everything just froze. And I couldn't think straight. I just had this vision of all of the things that we had done together with Max and the role he played. And what made it even more poignant was the fact that he was on his way to Addis to film us coming down from Mount Kenya. We're doing this show, a video, showing the way the glaciers are retreating on Mount Kenya and the impact that this is having on people. And this was exactly the kind of messaging and kind of thing that Max really loved and could do. He was also instrumental in that hike, in getting Dee, who'll talk to you later, to come and join that hike. And I think it shows both Max's passion and his ability to connect with people in order to drive this agenda. As we came down the mountain and we started getting cell phone reception driving back to Nairobi, my cell phone literally lit up with messages from all sorts of people in the bank, outside the bank. Have you heard? How are you dealing with this? What kind of memorial can we have for Max? And I think this just shows the depth, not only of the admiration, but also the love that people had for him. A lot of people have talked about the kinds of skills that Max had that made him such a wonderful professional in this field. He had the science. He had the communication skills. He had the passion. He had the tenacity, the ability to bring people together. a few things that struck in my mind. One was the wild ideas. It was a bit difficult, particularly at the beginning. I'd be sitting in my office. Here's Max, okay? Some other wild idea. And I have to admit, at the beginning, in typical bank form, I really didn't get it. Oh, what are you going on about, Max? But eventually he dragged us into youth events, into film events. And honestly, I didn't get it at the beginning. But eventually I did. But the wild ideas also had a tenacity to them. The one that really stuck in my mind was that when we did the first One Planet Summit in Paris, he came to us with an idea essentially to create Pokemon Go for climate, an augmented reality, and we would have people all over the world on their cell phones playing this game, scoring points, running all over Paris, collecting things at stations and all sorts of points all over Paris. Great idea, and he had most of this done. He could have delivered it. Unfortunately, some of our French counterparts were not quite so bold and understanding in terms of this, and it didn't go forward. But the point is that he raised awareness, and instead they agreed to light up 12 monuments in these iconic colors. And Max's reaction wasn't, oh, what the hell, they didn't go with my idea. Great, we got the colors. Next idea, here we come. So this tenacity and the ability to keep driving it was absolutely critical. There's a second element of Max which hasn't really come out very clearly in these discussions. And that was his ability and his willingness to just do what it took to make things happen. We all know about the drive. We all know about the articulate talk. We all know about the bow tie. But what a lot of people don't know is that every time you saw a set there, somebody had to take that set down at the end when everybody else had gone home. Max was always there. How can he carry the box? How can he pack something away? How can he clean up? How can he thank the people, the support staff that were helping us at that venue? And this, I think, shows part of Max's humanity, his ability to connect with people. He was also a wonderful mentor. There's a large number of people here in the audience that came to the bank and came to this because of Max, and Max has mentioned him. On a very personal note, I hope my son is okay with it. My son Sean is in the back. He was a graduate student at King's in climate change when we did the Innovate for Climate in Frankfurt. And Sean came along just to understand what was happening. Two things came out of that. One was, whenever he had a free moment, he went to hang out with Max. Of all the people on the team, Max was the one that would talk and give him ideas. Second thing is, he was working on a campaign, my son was working on a campaign against plastic straws. He discussed it once. Within minutes, Max was offering the whole power of Connect for Climate to do it, and was pushing Sean that he wasn't being ambitious enough in terms of drawing these links. This is not Max's job. It was just his way of connecting and driving this forward. And I think that's indicative of what he is. You heard Max's dad talking about him growing up in Lesotho. That was an affinity point between Max and myself. I grew up in South Africa, difficult years. In fact, I was trapped in the coup in 1986 and detained on the border at that point in time. I also spent a lot of my formative career working on the Lesotho Highlands. And so I had a lot of time to talk to Max about Lesotho and what is, and you could tell immediately it wasn't just his name, it was in his blood. Really, the passion was there. And so I think befitting these African roots, what comes to my mind is a quote from Nelson Mandela. Now, Max said in that video, and I hadn't recognized it before, that he'd never met Madiba. But when you hear this quote, I wonder if Madiba wasn't writing it for Max. What did he say? He said, a good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. But when you add a literate tongue or pen, then you have something very special. I think that sums it up. Now, far be it from me to correct Madiba. I would have gone on to say, add a camera and an internet connection, and then you've got the package. But I think this really sums it up. Ndate Max, you remain a climate warrior. And our commitment to you today is twofold. Number one, We will continue this fight in your honor, day to day. And as your dad said, we will not give up. We will continue this. Second, we will all try to nurture and channel our inner Maxes in everything we do. To Max's family, drawing on the Quaker tradition, we will hold you in the light going forward. Thank you, Max.
Noi Mori, we are Rako Pacifica. We'd like to dedicate this song to Max Edkins. Condolences to his friends, colleagues, and family. This is our dedication to him.
each and every day. All you have to do is stand strong, you have to stand firm. You have the decision to believe in what you dream, to achieve, rise up through every storm, never stray eyes up into a damn rainbow today. Confidence in yourself, each step at a time. Just know you're never alone.
So hold my hand, come fly with me. Spread your wings, your spirit's free. A yearning stirs from deep within. Awakens hope, come take me home. Home, 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 home,
So here's the thing about Lesotho. It is a tiny country that's landlocked by South Africa. It is this rough diamond, unknown to many, but unique and beautiful nonetheless. And when you're from there, and especially when you go out to the world, you wear the fact that you're from Lesotho like a badge of honor. Days before a group of us went up Mount Kenya, I was having lunch with Kaya, who, although I just met, I felt I'd known her for a while because Max had put us in touch and he had told me all the amazing things about Kaya. Chatting to Kaya, she told me about how Max would, beaming with all the pride, would tell everyone at the bank that he was from Lesotho. And that now and again, he would drop phrases in Sesotho, which obviously left everyone in awe. That was Max, the Sesotho-speaking white boy from Lesotho with a Sesotho middle name. Max was destined to stand out. I was probably around 9 years old when I first met Max. And although I don't remember much from those days, I do remember that my best friend Kathy and I, who's Seamus's little sister, I remember we used to think that Max and Seamus were the coolest people in the world. Who were the coolest people in the world, yeah. Both sporting dreadlocks, we were glad to be remotely associated to them because it earned us some street cred. From looking up to Max for his sheer coldness as a 9-year-old, to bumping into him on campus now and again at the University of Cape Town, to meeting up in India for Seamus and Smita's wedding back in February 2012, and to the last time that I saw him about 3 years ago here in DC, Max was always beaming with joy. Max was always a joy to be around. Humble yet witty, Max could hold down a conversation on just about anything. I remember the night he came out to meet a group of us from Lesotho who were in DC as part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship. I remember Max made it a point to jump from chair to chair so that he could catch a word with everyone, even with people he had just met that night. I look back at that night and remember how happy and animated he was because he was surrounded by his homies. He was surrounded by Peace of Lesotho in DC. Even though I can count the number of times I actually interacted with Max, save from the Facebook chats over the years, what I will always be grateful for is that I was somehow part of his last efforts to raise awareness. That I was part of, I will always be grateful that I was somehow part of his efforts to raise awareness around climate change. I remember my best friend Kathy sending me a text message saying, "Hey, I just gave Max your number, he'll be in touch." And without me missing a beat, moments later, my phone buzzed, and it was a message from Max. He wanted me to let him know when I had time so that he could call me. And I thought, what is Max up to? True to form, Max had one of his crazy ideas. He wanted me, an inexperienced girl, he wanted to stick me in front of a camera and let this girl sound the clarion call for the world to step up efforts to fight climate change. Max wanted me to be the youth ambassador for climate change to help raise awareness on climate issues. I told him, no, it's not gonna happen. Max, I'm no climate expert. I can't speak to that. Besides, I had a holiday planned in Trinidad and Tobago that I'd been looking forward to. So I told him, nope, sorry, my friend, it's not gonna happen. Well, you all know how that story ended. Weeks later, I was 4,900 meters above sea level at the peak of Mount Kenya, looking down at a receding glacier. While my initial thoughts were, how am I on a mountain and not dancing in the streets of Trinidad for carnival? Well, I was quickly overcome by a sense of quickly overcome by a sense of achievement and gratitude that I had made it, and in the process lent my voice to this important cause, all thanks to Max Atkins. You see, what Max envisioned was to get a young, normal girl like me to get the world to wake up and step up climate action, because there's simply no planet B. Max did not want to leave it only to the experts. He saw that this is a conversation we all need to have, that the world should join efforts to fight climate change, and that certainly young people like me had to be part of the conversation because youth are unstoppable. Max planted an idea. He planted a seed, and it grew into something beautiful. When I'm alone with my thoughts, I catch myself wondering, what if I'd chosen not to do the expedition and gone ahead with my plans and gone to Trinidad? Would it hurt a little less? Because it would have meant that I would not, in the weeks before his death, it would have meant that I wouldn't have been constantly in touch with him via email, via Skype, via WhatsApp messages, via phone calls. Would it hurt a little less, I asked myself. I don't know, but I certainly don't think so. I suppose the Mount Kenya expedition and the surrounding events Mac worked tirelessly to put together were his swan song. And I'm forever grateful to have been part of it. And I can only promise to continue to be the young climate champion that he sought me out to be. These are only a handful of memories that I shared with Max, but these are moments and memories that I will carry on forever. We all have our Max moment that we can all hang on to and take it one day at a time. To Astrid, Theo, Dawn, Marianne, Stebo, know that your son, your husband, your dad, your friend, your brother was loved by many, that he touched many lives, including mine. Robala ka kgotso, Thabiso.
Good evening. Max, it is a great honor for me to join the many people you met and inspired here and around the world to celebrate your life and the tremendous commitments you made to making our planet a more livable place for all. In the handful of years we knew each other, many strands of our lives were woven together on both a personal and professional level, from sharing an office at Connect for Climate, witnessing the early stages and joys of parenthood at similar times, collaborating with the Young African Society, biking to work, to the many fun and thoughtful conversations we had over the years. I'm very grateful for all of the many memories. In the face of two of the world's most daunting challenges, climate change and poverty, you were able to channel your deep concerns into action, mustering determination and positivity and encouraging others to join the movement of change our planet needs. Inspired by your upbringing, your family, your father, early on, you recognized the power of storytelling to drive change. Having invested in understanding the science, your ability to intertwine scientific fact with storytelling was compelling and distinctive, particularly for a complex topic like climate change that has long suffered from inadequate communication. Your resolve to spread this message came in so many forms: filmmaking, teaching, writing, speaking, inspiring youth, and engaging political figures, approaching Michael Bloomberg at a bank event and convincing him to wear the green C4C bracelet, an example I recall with a smile. I'm hopeful that the archive of your life's work has and will continue to inspire action for years to come. Your smile, optimism, and generosity were ever present, and you always took pleasure in making those around you happy. My wife and I cherish the memory of you entertaining our daughter, 2 years old at the time, laughing with unfettered joy as you tirelessly chased a soccer ball on a sunny day in a local park. Thank you, Max, for everything you did on this planet. You're an inspiration. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Slater, and I'm a filmmaker and a climate activist and a friend of Max. Like all of you, I loved Max. We connected through art and communication and storytelling and a mutual love of whiskey in the overwhelming realm of climate change. I loved Max because he always made me laugh. He always found a way to connect to me and make me feel like I mattered, that my voice mattered. I met Max a couple years ago when Connect for Climate partnered with me and my team on this insane 10-year documentary I made called Youth Unstoppable. My producers Dan and Wendy also loved Max and are sending their love to him and to his family and everyone here. Max joined the Connect for Climate team and our dear friends Giulia, Francis, Donald, and Lucia when I was in this insane state of having over 400 hours of footage from 8 years of filming, and I was completely overwhelmed. I had no idea what to do. I started filming when I was 15 because I wanted to document the rise of the global youth climate movement and to give a voice to my generation. Max believed in the work I was doing because we both felt that then and now, more than ever, that we need to embrace our shared humanity and our shared human experience if we're ever to move forward and adapt. Max, with his bow ties and his easy smile, with his incredible intelligence and his understanding of story, helped us make the film that we have today. I miss Max every day. He was one of the kindest people I ever knew, and he was so proud of his family. He was so proud of his filmmaker dad, Don. He told me about him all the time. He was so proud of Astrid and Tio. I remember being in Poland at COP24 this past December, and he was on the phone whispering to me because Astrid was in Poland negotiating, and it was Max's turn to supervise nap time. I remember laughing and laughing on the other end of the phone, imagining Max with all of these kids at nap time, tiptoeing, as he gave me advice on how I should speak on Youth Day. He helped me understand how to tell a story about human connection and love within such a frightening and abstract issue. But that was Max. At UN climate change conferences, which are arguably some of the most dehumanizing spaces you'll ever encounter, there he'd be, in his absurdly dapper bow ties, laughing, connecting,
being the kind of person that we all want to be. Someone who let you know his thoughts, but just as easily shared his love and his friendship with you. It was Max that made me truly believe that another world is possible. He made me believe in a beautiful world that is caring and just and sustainable, where everyone is taken care of, and where our relationships to each other and to the planet mean something more than just heady concepts, but are tangible things that can exist. Max saw a brighter reality that he knew we could one day achieve, and he made us all see it. He wanted us all to see it, because that was Max, changing the world in whatever way that he could, so that Tio and Astrid and all of us could one day live in a world where his absence didn't feel like hope was lost. But we were merely in a normal day, because that was Max. A light so bright that it will never burn out inside of us. A light so bright that every day will always be brighter because of him. There's a quote that I have tacked up on my wall that always makes me think of Max. And it's, to be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing. And that was Max. And we all knew it, and we all felt that. I'd like to now bring up the Connect for Climate team, who I love so, so much. Please help me in welcoming them onto the stage.
And there she is. I haven't prepared remarks because I thought everyone would have spoke about Max, about his work, and when I think of him, what I think is that he was the person that really embodied Connect for Climate. We went through very great and happy moments and also very sad ones, losing Lucia and Donald and other co-workers, and Max really took on the challenge. He wasn't afraid and helped me and helped the team moving forward. He was free, and he was so free because he knew what we are fighting for. He believed in that with all his spirit, and I thought I'd share something special that happened to Kaya and myself. Where's Kaya? Come join me. Right after losing Max in Nairobi. We were there in Nairobi, and one day I was feeling very overwhelmed, and I stepped out of a room, and I was in the middle of a park at the UN Environment Headquarters, and I looked up at the sky, and I asked Max, I need one of your hugs. Will I ever hug you again? And by the time I cast my eyes back down, a young African lady walked towards me, and she looks at me in the eyes, and she's asking me, do you need a hug? And I say yes, and she hugged me with this very deep, strong hug that reminded me a lot of Max's hugs, which we all remember, and that really made me feel he is with us, he's watching over us, and I wanted to share this hug with you. And I know Kaya also wants to share something.
Yeah. In the days after losing Max, we spent most of our time outside in the garden of our hotel, just being together and hiding away from the world. And there was this eagle that came every day and sat in the tree over us. And every morning we'd walk out and we'd look up, and if it wasn't there yet, it would soon fly down. And with this kind of maxed strength, and it gave us strength to keep supporting some of the events that he was so excited about at the Environment Assembly and One Planet. And when it came time to go out back into the world, Max always wore so many pins, and he had given me an In Poverty pin and an SDG pin, and I was looking at all my climate change pins and my SDG pins and my social justice pins, and wanting to put something on, but I didn't have a Max pin. And so that's where we have this. And for me, it keeps his story with us. May it keep his story with all of us as we continue building that low-carbon resilient future he believed so much in. And may it just be his voice in our ear, pushing us to do more, always just that little bit more. And if we have doubts, for him saying, just do it. And may it link all of us together and connect us all to Max as we continue fighting for climate justice.
And many of our colleagues are not here from Connect for Climate, so we prepared a video that we will see in a short moment. I just wanted to say that Max believed in people, he believed in stories, and he was such a great inspiration to all of us. We will keep on fighting and keep on working to carry on his mission. Thank you.
Hi, Max.
Hey, Max.
Hello, Max.
Dear Max.
Ciao, Max.
Max.
You welcomed me with open arms when I joined Connect for Climate.
You always believed in me, my potential.
You challenged me. You pushed me.
You taught me that kindness is always the route to take.
You showed me how to find joy in jumping in front of cameras and interviewing people.
You introduced me to everyone, and you brought me into the climate movement. And I'm forever grateful.
You made me who I am today, not just professionally speaking, but personally speaking as well.
I have so many memories about you.
I will forever remember when Lucia first found you, this new Max from South Africa, and I found a new friend.
Remember that time back in Marrakesh when we first met? You gave me this bracelet. I've been wearing it since then.
Still got it.
Remember that time when you raised total cards at the climate gala?
Remember the time you thought you could carry 1,000 t-shirts from a street in Marrakesh inside the COP venue? And that didn't work, of course.
Remember that time we took photos during Earth Day of No Doubt?
When we hauled the shopping cart out of the Anacostia River.
We were riding with two people on your bike and that was not supposed to happen. We were laughing so hard, it was so much fun.
You were happiness, you were joy.
And your joy was so infectious.
You believed in a world of possibilities, and you helped me believe in that too.
You were the conscience of the struggle to fight climate change.
Everything you touched would be transformed into a piece of magic.
You were a true force of nature, spirit that can never be stopped.
You left an indelible mark on the climate advocacy movement.
Even though you were always talking about the need to tackle some really big challenges in the world around climate change, you found a way to always see the opportunities and the possibilities in that challenge.
You were a climate champion.
A revolutionary in a bow tie.
You were so many things when it comes to the climate movement, but when it comes to me,
you were one of the best co-workers I've ever had.
You were a great friend.
You were family.
Like a big brother.
You would support me unconditionally.
You were a natural teacher, fielded every possible question I had, all the while inspiring me.
You were, and still are, my role model.
You have no idea how much we miss you.
We love you, Max.
And we miss you.
We all love you.
We are really gonna miss you.
But your love for C4C is with us.
We will always have you in our hearts and our thoughts.
Max, we will miss you so much, but your enthusiasm and your positive strength will forever guide C4C onwards.
We will try to see the world the way you saw the world, full of possibilities.
And there are 100,000 different situations where we'll be thinking of you always.
Thank you for all you've given us.
Your passion will continue to inspire people to act
and help us to move forward on this common thread that brought us all together.
Further, faster, together.
We'll keep on with your legacy, and strong and together, we will make you proud.
They know you're watching over us, and we will do everything we can to keep on fighting for a better world.
Amandla!
Away to!
Amandla!
Away to!
Amandla!
Away to!
Thank you, Max.
It's not my place to say this, but I got to say it. It doesn't matter which country it is, when the anthem is sung, we all rise. But I've said it to correct everybody's mistake. I'm going to say a few words just to get my choir to come down. We've been listening to the speeches that have been made, and we know and we feel you lost somebody you worked with. We lost a countryman. It makes it kind of difficult. But South Africa is known and has been known to keep on moving, to keep on trudging on. So, if you imagine a train, the steam locomotive, over the rivers, over the cliffs, over the mountains, it keeps on going. And we want to portray that, and hopefully, as we dance to it, you will also feel some relief. Shosholoza, Shosholoza, Kulezontaba, Stimela, Zibune, South Africa. Shosholoza, Kulezontaba, Stimela, Zibune, South Africa. When you are balega, South Africa, when you are balega, Kulezontaba, Stimela, Sibume, South Africa. Shosholoza, Kulezontaba, Stimela, Sibume, South Africa. Shosholoza, Kulezontaba, South Africa. Ulezonta, 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 next piece we want to present is a challenge to the audience. Your job is to guess how many songs are being sung at the same time.
Bawo tikosomandla kuyintoni kukwenqa bethu kanti senzeni ebusweni benkosi bawo tikosomandla kuyintoni kukwenqa bethu kanti senzeni ebusweni benkosi bawo tikosomandla bawo tikosomandla
Nobody's dancing. Nobody's dancing. Bawo tikosomandla kuyintoni kukwenqa bethu kanti senzeni ebusweni benkosi bawo tikosomandla kuyintoni kukwenqa bethu kanti senzeni ebusweni benkosi bawo tikosomandla Isologo, disicho, diti, vai. Isologo, disicho, diti, vai. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your participation, and I feel soothed and relieved. And I would not be African enough if I do not take half a minute to express my sincerest condolences to the Edkins family and to South Africa, maybe to the world, because we have lost. Nevertheless, this is one time when we know if you cannot do anything about it, just let it be well within you. And I trust with the music that we have given you, you feel soothed and consoled. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to Botswana now. We're We're going to get one song there, and then we'll sing that song, and then we'll be off the stage. You may sit down now. I'm sorry. However, if you are so moved to stand up and dance, it would be the time. Thank you. I apologize. Before I before they render the last piece, you probably want to know who they are. And very, very briefly, and I hope I will be brief, my wife is amongst them. If I'm not brief, she will scream my name. In 2007, the then ambassador to the South African embassy, Walid Norris, and his deputy minister, the late, and his deputy minister came here and found that when there were South African functions, typically they would play CDs. When he knew, because I grew up with him, that we like to sing. So he challenged me to put together a group of South Africans to sing the South African national anthem at their functions, which he is the ambassador, younger than me though, but anyway, he was bigger than me, and I agreed, and we started the choir, and we would perform now and again. But we got addicted to singing, and we decided, why don't we put together a permanent choir kind of thing? And we struggled with the name. We were inclined to say Voices of South Africa. But we said, well, it's too South African, why don't we give it a different name? So we decided on the name VUSA, VUSA, which means awaken. And then it was appropriate to call ourselves VUSA, Voices of South Africa. At the time, as time went on, we found that people from neighboring Southern Africa states wanted to come and sing with us. So we allowed them, because they know the diction and what we do in our music. And we had a quandary, well, how we're going to remain Voices of South Africa. So we legally changed our name to Voices from Southern Africa, where today we are represented by people from Zambia, from Malawi, from Zimbabwe, from Mozambique, from Angola, and Botswana. And now, that was good, but there were American people who on their Peace Corps missions went to South Africa. And they got the taste of the music. When they came and they heard about VUSA, they insisted they want to be part of that. Well, our charter says we don't discriminate against anybody for any reason. So we said, well, you're welcome. So they came in. You see some of them here. That young lady over there is one of those people. So I'm not trying to recruit people, but if you feel like singing the way we do, if you can talk, we will show you how to sing so you can join us. And Ms. Faith Chiro has got all our particulars to tell you what our address is, what our contact number is. Thank you so much.
Musadi katempa kalakasaina, kasaina kalakatempa, katempa kalakasaina.
Thank you, Voisa. And thank you all for being here. If you can and have time, please join us in the North Lobby for a reception. And we'll also have a memory book. I know many of you have asked. The book has been passed around in different teams. It'll be there if you'd like to send a message to the family. Thanks again.